The ship floated in the silent dark, its metal body creaking under the weight of old age. Inside the cockpit, two figures sat with the weight of fear between them. The human Armin leaned back in the pilot's chair, his eyes fixed on the broken collar lying on the floor. The collar was small, a circle of metal with faint red lines carved into its surface, but it carried the memory of suffering. Lyra, the alien girl he had freed, sat close to the wall, her knees drawn tightly to her chest. Her long platinum blonde hair fell over her pale face, and her glowing blue eyes stared at the collar, as if it were alive. She had spent years with that metal digging into her skin, years kneeling, serving, and begging. Even now, though the chain was gone, she still felt it pressing against her throat. Armand broke the silence. His voice was calm but firm. "We should throw it out. Open the hatch and send it into a star." Lyra's lips trembled. She shook her head slowly. "No, not yet." Her voice was soft but steady. "That collar holds proof. It remembers everything. My steps, my years, my pain. If we keep it, we can show the truth." Armand frowned. To him, it was just a piece of cruel technology. But when he looked at her trembling hands and the way her eyes glistened, he understood. That collar was more than metal. It was a record of her suffering. Before he could say more, the collar buzzed faintly. A dull hum filled the cabin. Then a red glyph lit up on its rim, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra gasped, clutching her knees. "No, it's awake." "What do you mean, awake?" Armin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "The collar has a brand signal," she whispered. "When it feels broken or removed, it speaks. It calls to the towers. They will come." Armand's hand shot out, grabbing the collar. He shoved it into a metal case, slammed it shut, and sealed it with a lock pad. The case vibrated as if the collar was alive, trying to break free. A sharp alarm cut through the cockpit. On the radar, two bright blips appeared, rushing closer with deadly speed. Patrol craft. Small, fast-armed, Armin cursed under his breath. "They're already here," the radio crackled. A cold mechanical voice spoke. "Unregistered freighter, cut your engines. Prepare to be boarded. You are carrying stolen property." Armin muted the channel. He glanced at Lyra, who sat frozen with fear. "They'll try to claim you're theirs," he said. "But you're not property. Not anymore." Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. Her hands shook as she whispered, "They will not stop." Armin pulled a lever. The engines roared to life, shaking the whole ship. "Then neither will I." The freighter lunged forward, diving into the thick debris of a gas giant's rings. Massive chunks of ice and rock spun around them, glittering in the faint starlight. The patrol ships followed, their red lights cutting through the darkness. "Hold on," Armand called, gripping the controls tightly. He dodged a spinning boulder, then flipped the ship hard to the left. The alien girl cried out, grabbing the armrest, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. The console beeped. The collar's case was still sending streams of data into the ship's system. Armand glanced at the screen. Market logs, trade records, chains of numbers and codes scrolled endlessly. But hidden within was something more, a packet labeled Witness. Armand clicked it open. A rush of files appeared, dates, locations, names of buyers and sellers, and the fates of those enslaved. It was proof of an empire built on chains. Lyra leaned forward, staring at the glowing words. Her lips quivered. "These are my years," she said. "Every day I was owned, every chain I carried. It is all here." Armand's eyes hardened. He had never believed himself a hero. He was just a hauler, a wanderer between stars. But now he held evidence that could tear down a system of cruelty. The patrol ships grew closer. Red triangles flashed on the cockpit glass. Weapon locks. Armand's voice was low but steady. "We have a choice. We can run and hide, or we can make sure they never put a collar on you again." Lyra lifted her head. Fear still lingered in her glowing eyes, but behind it was something stronger. "How?" she asked. Armand pointed to the console. "By sending this packet, by turning their weapon into our voice." Outside, the first missile streaked toward them, lighting the darkness with fire. Armand tightened his grip on the controls. The ship dove, engines screaming, weaving through the glowing ice fields. Lyra pressed her hands together, whispering words in her own tongue, half prayer, half hope. The missile exploded against a drifting chunk of rock, the shock wave shaking the freighter. The patrols were closing in. The caller's memory kept flashing across the screen, each word sharper, louder, heavier. For the first time since she had been freed, Lyra's voice rose above her fear. "Don't let them take me back," she pleaded. Armand glanced at her, his jaw set. "They won't. Not while I breathe. The stars spun, the alarm screamed, and the collar pulsed like a heartbeat trapped inside the case. Freedom had been given, but to keep it, they would have to fight. And so the brand woke, and the hunt began. The cockpit trembled as the ship tore into the icy rings of the gas giant. Jagged boulders of frozen rock tumbled past, glittering like shards of glass. Each one could smash the freighter into dust if Armin miscalculated even a little. Behind them, 2 patrol craft roared through the debris, hunting like predators that had caught the scent of blood. "Hold tight," Armin shouted, gripping the controls. His face was hard, sweat glistening across his brow. The engine strained as he forced the ship into a sharp dive. Lyra clutched the armrest, her glowing blue eyes wide with terror. The girl's body trembled, but she did not scream. She had learned long ago that screaming never saved you. Her gaze darted between the window filled with flying ice and the human at the controls. His hands never shook, not even as alarms blared and warning lights flashed red. The first patrol ship fired. A missile streaked through the rings, trailing fire and smoke. Armin slammed the thrusters to full burn, sending the freighter into a barrel roll. The missile clipped a boulder and exploded, scattering shards of ice like knives across the void. The shockwave slammed into the freighter. Lyra cried out as she was thrown against her seat, her hair falling wildly over her face. Armin gritted his teeth, forcing the ship upright again. "Why don't you stop?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "If they catch us, they'll only hurt you." Armin gave a short laugh, grim but steady. "I grew up in storms worse than this," he said. "Metal storms back on the mining fields. Ships fell apart every week. If you didn't learn to dance, you died. And I'm still dancing." The patrols tightened their chase, moving in sharp patterns meant to trap them. Their red lights glowed like burning eyes. Another missile locked onto the freighter. This time Armin didn't try to outrun it. Instead, he switched off the engines. The ship went dead silent, drifting through the debris. The missile overshot, chasing the last trail of heat. It smashed into a giant slab of ice and detonated in a blinding flare. Lyra gasped. "You killed the engines?" "Only for a second," Armin said, switching them back on. The ship roared again, surging forward. Sometimes you win not by running, but by pretending to be still. As they weaved through the frozen labyrinth, the collar's case buzzed on the floor. The console lit up with more of its memory files. Trade logs, smuggling routes, secret codes. But then something new appeared. A flashing folder marked Witness Packet. 93% complete. Armin's eyes flicked to it, then back to the flying rocks. "Almost ready," he muttered. "If we can send this to the Accord beacon, they'll have no choice but to hear us." Lyra leaned closer, her voice hushed but strong. "Then we must reach them, even if it costs everything." The second patrol craft drew closer, cannons glowing. It fired a net of micro darts, small but deadly, meant to pierce the hull and disable the engines. Armin twisted the freighter into a sharp spin, the darts streaking past like a swarm of angry insects. He activated the crane arm on the ship's belly and grabbed a massive chunk of ice drifting through the ring. The arm released it behind them. The patrol's sensors locked onto the glowing decoy, chasing it for precious seconds. Armin used those seconds to dive deeper into the rings, hugging the shadow of a massive frozen mountain. The comm crackled. A faint voice broke through the static. "Freighter, this is Hauler Starwind. We are losing power. Engine leak. Requesting tow," Armin frowned. "Now?" Lyra's head snapped toward him. "It could be a trap, or it could be real," Armin said. His hands hovered over the controls. She grabbed his sleeve. Her voice shook with urgency. "Why help them? We are being hunted. You cannot risk this." Armin glanced at her. "Because if we stop being human when it's hard, then we'll never be human when it's easy." He toggled the comm. "Hauler Starwind, this is Marrow Light. I'll give you 60 seconds. After that, we're both gone." The hauler sent coordinates. Its huge body floated, leaking sparks into the void. Armin swung the freighter under its belly, locking the tow clamps. For one breathless minute, he dragged the massive ship clear of the densest debris. On the other side, the hauler's lights flickered green. "Debt owed," the captain's voice rasped. "If you live, call it." Armin cut the tow and blasted forward again. The patrols were back, angrier than before. Their engines howled as they closed the distance. The witness packet on the console flashed 96%. 99%, a direct beam struck the freighter's tail. The ship lurched violently, sparks bursting across the panels. Smoke filled the cabin. Lyra cried out, clutching her chest. Armand slammed his fist on the console. Send it! The ship shuddered, but the witness packet launched, a glowing pulse of light racing across the void toward the Accord beacon. For a heartbeat, silence filled the cockpit. Lyra's glowing eyes widened. Did it go? Armand nodded, his lips curling into a tired smile. It went. Outside, the patrol ship circled, weapons locked, ready to tear them apart. Inside, the human and the alien girl sat in the smoke-filled cabin side by side. They were hunted, broken, and cornered, but now their voice was racing across the stars and no one could silence it. The cockpit was filled with smoke. Wires sparked along the ceiling as the freighter drifted half limp in the shadow of the giant's rings. Armand coughed, waving the smoke away while Lyra pressed a small cloth over her mouth. Her glowing blue eyes shone through the haze, locked on the console screen. The witness packet had been sent, but the ship was damaged, and the patrol craft were still hunting. For the moment, though, the asteroids shielded them from scanners. It gave them a sliver of silence. Armand leaned over the console, typing quickly. The caller's memory had not stopped pouring data. Long lists of transactions scrolled endlessly. Names, numbers, shipments. It was like the caller had been recording every cruelty, every sale, every chain tightened across the galaxy. Lyra's hand trembled as she reached for the glowing words. She touched the screen as if she could feel the pain through it. Her lips parted, whispering softly, "These are not just numbers. These are lives." Armand glanced at her, then back at the data. "We need to understand what's inside before the patrols find us again." He tapped a line that pulsed brighter than the rest. "Prototype, Lyra." Her heart lurched. "Prototype," she repeated, her voice sharp with fear. The collar case vibrated on the floor. A faint glow seeped out from its edges as though the brand inside wanted to speak again. Armand crouched, picked it up, and connected a cable from the ship's console into the small port hidden on its side. Instantly, more data erupted across the screen. Maps appeared, routes not of trade but of capture. They showed snatch crews, handler outposts, and safe houses hidden under shadows of distant stars. At the center of one route, flashing red, was a dark station orbiting a cold brown dwarf. Its codename Thorn. Armand's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a market, he said. It was a network, and Thorn is its heart. Lyra stared at the map, her face pale. "I was there once," she whispered. "Only for one season, but I remember. The walls were black, the halls were silent, and no one ever came back from the lower levels." Her body shook, and she pulled her knees close again, as if the memory itself was cold. Armand reached out and rested a steady hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll bring light into that place. We'll show them the proof they thought would stay buried." She looked up at him, her eyes wide, uncertain.
"Do you believe the Accord will care?"
He sighed. "They'll listen. But listening and acting are not the same." The console beeped. A new file had appeared inside the caller's memory. Unlike the others, this one was locked by heavy encryption. Symbols scrolled across the screen in an ancient merchant language. Armand frowned. "I can't read this." Lyra leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "I can," she said softly. "My first owner spoke it when he wanted to hide his words. I learned to survive by listening." Her slender fingers danced across the console, repeating the patterns of the code aloud. One by one, the locks opened. The file bloomed on the screen, revealing logs of shipments and lists of handlers. Each name matched with crimes written in their own words. It was damning evidence. Armand's chest grew tight. He thought of the miners who had died with no justice. He thought of the way humanity was often seen, as reckless, as dangerous. But here now, he had the power to prove that humanity could also be the voice that shouted when others were silent. Suddenly, the console beeped again. A message flashed across the screen. Accord beacon packet received. Jurisdiction flag raised. Hold position for contact. Armand laughed softly, bitter but hopeful. "Hold position," he muttered. "As if holding still out here doesn't mean dying." Before Lyra could answer, another ping echoed through the ship. This one was not from the beacon. It was from the hauler he had saved. "Debt owed," the message read. "Dock with us. We can hide your heat and paint your face, but you must choose quickly." A second message followed, this time encrypted with Accord Marshal codes. Marshal Tender 7. Stand by to give sworn statement. Protection available. Risk remains high. 2 doors had opened. One offered the shadow of smugglers, the other the shield of law. Both were dangerous. Lyra looked at Armin, her face pale in the glow of the screen. "Which will you choose?" she asked. Armand leaned back, his hands tight on the chair. He stared at the case on the floor where the collar still buzzed like a trapped heart. His mind raced with possibilities. Trust smugglers, and maybe they would betray him. Trust the Accord, and maybe they would abandon him. But one thought burned brighter than the rest. He could not let Lyra return to chains. His voice came firm, steady, like stone. "Whichever path we take together." The ship's hull groaned as if the stars themselves were listening. The patrol craft had not given up. They were circling, searching, waiting to strike again. Time was running out. Armand stood, closing the console. "Prepare yourself, Lyra. The collar's memory has made us louder than they ever expected. Now they will come harder than they ever have." Her glowing eyes met his. For the first time she did not look away. "Then let them come," she said. "This time I will not kneel." The case on the floor buzzed one last time, its red glyph flashing. The hunt was far from over, but now the prey had learned how to fight back. The freighter drifted like a wounded bird in the dark. Smoke still lingered in the cockpit and sparks fizzed from a broken panel. Armand worked the controls with steady hands, though his jaw was tight with worry. Lyra sat beside him, clutching the broken collar in her lap as if it were both a curse and a shield. Two choices stood before them. One was the Accord Marshal tender, promising protection but also judgment. The other was the hauler Starwind, the ship he had dragged free from the storm. Both offered safety. Both carried risk. The comm flickered again. The voice of the hauler captain came through, rough and scarred. "You saved my ship? A debt like that doesn't die easy. Dock with us. I can hide your heat and give you cover." Lyra turned her glowing eyes toward Armin. Her voice was soft but urgent. "It could be another trap. Smugglers hide with one hand and sell with the other." Armin gave a thin smile. "Maybe. But sometimes debt is stronger than gold." He steered the freighter toward the hauler. The docking clamps locked with a groan of metal, and the airlock opened with a hiss. The air inside was warmer, thicker, carrying the smell of oil and old breath. A woman waited in the hold. Her face was lined with scars, and one eye was pale from an old wound. Yet her stance was firm, her voice steady. "I am Captain Mira Jakes," she said. "And I pay my debts," Armand nodded. "Then we'll pay ours. We carry something dangerous. If you help us, you share the risk." Mira gave a short laugh. "Risk is the only language worth speaking out here." She gestured to a crate in the corner. "I have something older than law but stronger. An oath note. If a free captain swears on it, the Accord cannot ignore it. They must come." Lyra's breath caught. "An oath note?" Mira pulled the cloth away, revealing a small device shaped like a triangle of black stone, its surface glowing faintly with runes. Few of these remain. They are relics from the first days of the Accord. They force a field court wherever they are called. Armin studied the device. "A court here? At Thorn?" "Yes," Mira said. "But a court is not a shield. It will bring the Accord. It will also bring every handler who wants to silence you." Lyra tightened her grip on the collar. Her eyes were wet but steady. "Then let it bring them." "I will speak. I will not kneel again." Mira gave her a long look, then nodded. "Bravery suits you. But remember, words can be heavier than chains." Together they worked quickly. Mira's crew brought sheets of reflective mesh to cover the freighter's hull, making it resemble her own ship to scanners. They changed the transponder codes, painted the heat signature, and disguised the damage. For now the marrow light wore a new face. Armin carried the oath note into the cockpit. He placed it on the console where it pulsed faintly with life. He placed one hand on it, his voice low but strong. "I, Armin Hale, free captain, call for a field court at Cold Station Thorn. I swear to bring proof and to stand as witness." The node flared with light, sending a pulse into the void. Across the stars, the Accord beacon would now register his oath. There would be no turning back. The console beeped in reply. A short message blinked on the screen. Oath acknowledged. Field court pending, Lyra watched the words appear. Her lips trembled, but then she spoke clearly. "I will give my statement. I will name the hands that chained me. Even if my voice shakes, I will not be silent." Armin placed his hand gently over hers. "Then you will not be alone." The hauler drifted beside them, a silent ally in the cold dark. Mira's voice came through the comm once more. When you stand at Thorn, you will stand against wolves. But remember, wolves bleed like any beast. If you need my guns, they are yours. Armin gave a sharp nod. Then we'll bleed them dry. The stars shifted as the freighter and the hauler set course toward the brown dwarf. As the dark shape of Thorn crept into view, Lyra pressed her forehead against the glass. The sight made her stomach twist. The black station hung in the void like a dead ring, its red lights blinking like eyes. She whispered to herself, words only she could hear. This time I returned not as property, but as witness. The ship's sensors buzzed. Thorn had noticed them. A coded signal flashed across the void. Turn back or be erased. Armand placed his hand on the oath note again. His reply was simple. We will not turn. The station stirred, its defenses lighting up like fangs. The path of oath and blood had begun. Cold Station Thorn hung in the void like a broken crown. Its black metal surface glowed faintly with red strips, pulsing like the veins of a beast. The brown dwarf's weak light gave the station an eerie outline, half dead and half living. For Lyra, the sight of Thorn brought back every nightmare she had tried to bury. Her hands clutched the collar in her lap, the jagged edges cutting into her palms. Beside her, Armin sat in the pilot's chair, steady as stone. He did not flinch when the docking claws of Thorn clamped onto their freighter. He did not blink when the red lights along the station's docking ring flared, signaling capture. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were calm. They're pulling us in, he said. Lyra nodded slowly, though her heart raced. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know this place. They made us wait in silence for hours before they chained us to the blocks. They wanted us to fear the sound of our own breath. Armin turned his head toward her. Then let them hear your voice now. Let them choke on it. The airlock hissed open. Cold wind poured into the ship, sharp as knives. Armin walked out first, his coat heavy around his shoulders. Lyra followed, clutching the collar like proof of life and death. Captain Mira stepped beside them, her scarred face lit with grim resolve. A crowd waited. Handlers in black armor, merchants in silver masks, guards with shock pikes. At their center stood a man with a polished mask that reflected the dim red light. His voice echoed across the bay. This is private property, he declared. You trespass, and you bring with you stolen goods. His masked gaze lingered on Lyra. She is no one's property, Armin said, his voice firm. He lifted the oath note. Its runes glowed like fire. By accord law, I call a field court. Proof has been given. Witness will be heard. The crowd stirred uneasily. Some handlers shifted on their feet. Others hissed in anger. The silver mask tilted his head, the polished surface hiding his expression. You think law lives here? Law froze in this place long ago. Before Armin could answer, a sharp chime rang through the bay. The air shimmered and a blue projection appeared, straight from the accord beacon. The words spun in the air for all to see. Field court acknowledged. Jurisdiction active. Gasps spread through the crowd. Some guards lowered their weapons, unsure. The mask's voice grew sharper. Even if a court is called, what proof can you bring stronger than a signed bill of sale? Lyra stepped forward, her small frame shaking, but her eyes glowing with fire. She raised the collar high. This, she said, her voice clear, echoing against the steel walls. This remembers everything. The silver mask laughed coldly. A memory forged by thieves. Lies written by rebels. Armin nodded toward the freighter. Two small crates rolled down the ramp on treads. They opened, revealing stacks of printed logs, dates, and numbers pulled from the collar's memory. These are not lies, Armand said. These are your signatures, your shipments, your chains. The crowd went silent. The mask did not laugh this time. A sudden siren wailed across the station. From above, a new ship descended, a small vessel painted in the deep blue of the Accord Marshals. Its insignia gleamed like a blade. The bay doors shook as it docked, and a woman stepped out, tall and gray-haired, her badge shining on her chest. Her voice carried like thunder. Let them speak. Let the court hear them, and let Thorn answer. The handlers shifted nervously. Some whispered. Others tightened their grips on their weapons. The floor of the bay rumbled. Panels split open, rising into metal bars that formed a circle around Armin, Lyra, and Mira. The cage rose from the floor itself, sealing them in. Lyra's heart hammered in her chest. It is a pit, she whispered. They used it for auctions. Now they want to use it for court. Armin's eyes never wavered. Then we'll turn their pit into their grave. The marshal stepped onto the platform, her expression cold but fair. "Speak," she said, "and know that your words are bound to law." Armand spoke first. His voice was simple, plain. He told of the caller's awakening, the pursuit, the proof. He did not shout, but his words carried weight. Mira spoke next, describing what she had seen, the chase through the rings, the oath called, the truth carried in their ship. Then, it was Lyra's turn. She stepped into the center of the pit, her knees weak, her hands trembling. She raised the collar, her voice shaking at first, then growing stronger. "I was taken when I was small," she said. "They told me I was dead. They sold me as if I were cloth. I carried chains heavier than my body. I watched others disappear into silence. But I am here. I am alive. And I remember." Her voice rang out, filling the bay. She named the handlers who had beaten her, the merchants who had bought her, the masters who had thrown her away. She did not stop until her throat burned, until her body shook. When she finished, the bay was silent. Even the guards lowered their eyes. The marshal turned toward the silver mask. "Answer." The mask spread his hands. "Trade is legal. Debt is legal." She was dead. She was trade. The marshal's face hardened. "Debt is not flesh." Before she could continue, a hidden panel opened in the wall. A barrel slid out, glowing with energy. Lyra's eyes widened. "Gun!" she cried. Armand moved before thought, shoving her down, his arms stretched wide. The weapon fired, the blast searing through the air. The shield of fate had been broken. The barrel flashed like lightning. A white-hot bolt cut through the air, heading straight for the pit. In that single instant, everything seemed to move in slow motion. Lyra's cry echoed across the chamber, sharp and full of terror. But Armand was already moving. His body slammed into hers, pushing her to the ground. He spread his arm wide, and a burst of light shimmered around them. A compact shield emitter strapped to his wrist crackled to life, forming a glowing wall of energy. The blast struck the shield with a deafening roar. Sparks flew. The air smelled of burning metal, and the floor trembled beneath their bodies. Lyra clung to Armand's arm, her heart racing. The shield shuddered, then held. Gasps rang through the bay. The marshal barked orders. "Lock that weapon. Secure the walls." Her voice thundered, pulling the guards out of their shock. Mira drew a compact pistol from under her coat and fired a stun shot at the hidden panel. The weapon mount sparked and locked in place, disabled. The silver-masked merchant tried to step back into the crowd, but a marshal's drone zipped forward, lashing a line around his ankles. He crashed to the floor, his polished mask cracking against the steel. Armand pulled the shield emitter off his arm, its energy fading. He turned to Lyra, his eyes burning with concern. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head quickly, though her chest heaved with fear. I'm fine. You stopped it." Armand gave a small nod. "Good, because they're not finished yet." Two marshal deputies dropped from the tender above, magnetic boots clanging on the steel. They stepped into the pit, raising their stun rifles, forming a protective circle around Armand, Lyra, and Mira. The court had changed. It was no longer just words. It was survival. The marshal commander raised her voice again, sharp and cold. "Attempted murder during sworn testimony. Capital offense. This court is bound to continue, and this station is under seizure." Chaos erupted. Some handlers dropped their weapons and fled. Others screamed in defiance, drawing blades and shock pikes. The bay became a storm of fear and rage. Armand stood tall, pulling Lyra behind him. He looked at the marshal commander. "You have enough proof to end this. Pull us out. Burn their nests." The commander shook her head. "Proof is not enough. Without witnesses, law is paper. With your testimony and her words, we can break not one nest, but all of them. But it will mean walking deeper into the wolf's den." Lyra's hands trembled, but she lifted the collar high once more. Her voice rose, stronger now. "Then we go deeper. I will not kneel again. I will speak in every room they built on chains." The marshal studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Then we will need bait. And courage." Armand stepped forward, his eyes hardened like steel. "Use me. I'll carry a false packet. I'll look like a buyer. They'll open their doors. You follow the trail." Mira grimaced. "That's a quick way to end up dead." Armand gave a humorless smile. "Maybe. But it's a better way than letting them keep hunting." Lyra's glowing eyes locked onto his. "I will not hide while you bleed for me." "You won't," he said firmly. He touched her shoulder. "You'll walk beside me, as witness." The marshal commander drew a glowing triangle on her wrist pad. "Then prepare. We move in 1 hour. This station is under seizure. Any who wish to leave may go. Any who stay will be searched. Any who raise a hand will lose it. The announcement echoed through Thorn. Some handlers ran for their ships. Some merchants knelt, offering data to save themselves. But others remained, eyes hard, weapons hidden, waiting for a chance to strike again. Lyra's breath shook as she watched them scatter. She had been among those crowds once, faceless, chained, voiceless. Now she stood in the center, holding the proof of their crimes. Armin turned to her, his voice low and steady. You spoke, and they tried to silence you. That means your words cut deep. That means you're winning. She blinked, her throat tight. I am only strong because you stood with me. No, he said firmly. You were strong long before I came. I just gave you room to rise. For a brief moment, the chaos of the station faded. Lyra's heart steadied. She no longer saw herself as the chained girl kneeling in the dirt. She was a voice now, and her voice had weight. The marshal's deputies tightened their line. Mira reloaded her pistol, her scarred face lit with grim fire. The commander raised her badge, her gray hair whipping in the cold air. Court will resume, she declared, and the nests will fall. Armin exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of choice settle heavy on his shoulders. He was no soldier, no hero. He was just a human who had once hauled ore through storms. But now storms felt familiar, almost welcome, because storms were where he learned how to fight. He looked down at Lyra, who gripped the collar as if it were both weapon and shield. Together, he said. Her lips curved into the faintest, fiercest smile. Together. Above them, the brown dwarf's dim light pulsed. Around them, Thorn bristled with shadows and enemies. But inside the pit, a human and an alien girl had turned chains into testimony. And testimony into fire. The next move would not just be defense. It would be the opening gambit in a war for every voice that had ever been silenced. The freighter slid away from Cold Station Thorn under the cover of Mira's hauler. The martial tender shadowed them from a distance, its blue insignia glowing faintly against the dark. The oath node's pulse still echoed across the Accord network, summoning Law to the brown dwarf. But Law was slow and chains were fast. Armin knew they had no time to wait. Inside the cockpit, Lyra sat beside him. She no longer held the collar like a curse. Now she carried it like a torch. Its glow lit her pale face as she read through the roots hidden in its memory. Her voice was calm, steady. This path leads to a mining asteroid. Handla Nest. They keep children there. Armin adjusted the course. Then that's where we go. The marshal commander's voice came through the comm. Remember, Captain Hale, each nest we strike must give us more witnesses, more proof. The Accord will not move unless the record is heavy. Armin answered without hesitation. Then we'll give them weight enough to sink a star. The first nest appeared as a hollowed asteroid, its docking arm glowing faintly. A handler's voice crackled through the channel. State purpose, Armin's reply was cold. Purchase review quiet, the handler chuckled. Quiet costs more. Then take it out of my false credit, Armin said. He sent a dummy block that would vanish in minutes. The dock opened. As the freighter settled inside, Lyra's hands tightened. She whispered, I know that voice. He made me carry crates until my back bled. Armin's jaw hardened. Then he's the first to answer. The docking bay was dim, lit by flickering lights. The handler waited with 2 guards, grinning when he saw Lyra. Well, well. The little runner? Thought you froze. Still pretty? Lyra lifted her chin. And you still smell of fear. The handler barked a laugh. You have fire. That will sell for more. Armin stepped forward, voice flat. Show me the stock. The handler snapped his fingers. A side door opened. 7 figures stepped out. 5 children and 2 elders, wrists marked with glowing binds. Their eyes were wide, careful, silent. Lyra's breath hitched. She knelt, holding out her hands to them. It's all right. You are witnesses now. You belong to no one. The handler frowned. What game is this? The answer came in the form of shadows. Martial drones swarmed into the bay, silent and sharp. Their voices echoed in metallic unison. Field court. Stand by. The guards tried to draw their weapons. Armin moved faster. He slammed the handler's wrist against the wall, the hidden trigger clattering to the floor. Lyra kicked it away, her glowing eyes burning with fury. The children huddled around her, staring at the broken collar on her belt. One whispered, Are we really free? Lyra touched the child's hand gently. Yes, from this moment you are free, and your voice will be heard. The Marshal commander's voice crackled through the comm. Nest 1 secured. Send coordinates for Nest 2. They moved again. The freighter became a ghost, sliding from one nest to the next. At each, the same pattern unfolded. False buyer, fake credits, witnesses freed, drones flooding in, and handlers falling in shock. Each child that stepped into the light added weight to the witness packet. Each elder that spoke made the caller's memory heavier. The record grew into a chain too vast to ignore. By the time they reached the 4th nest, Lyra's voice no longer trembled. She stood tall beside Armin, holding the collar like a banner. Your silence ends here, she told the handlers. Your chains break here. The elders bowed to her, calling her voice bearer. The children clung to her hands, their glowing eyes shining with hope. But hope carried risk. At the 5th nest, alarms blared before they could even dock. The handler there had already received word. Ships lifted off the asteroid, guns hot. Mira's hauler fired first, its cannons lighting the dark. The Marshal tender swooped in, blue lights blazing. The battle was short but brutal. When it ended, 2 nests had fled into the void, scattering like rats. Armin slammed a fist against the console. They'll run. They'll hide. The Marshal commander's voice was steady. Then we chase. Until there are no more places left to hide. Lyra placed her hand on his. Her voice was quiet but fierce. They thought they could erase us. But every nest we break writes our names into the stars. Armin looked at her, at the children behind her, at the collar glowing like a beacon. For the first time in years, he felt something more than anger. He felt purpose. He turned the freighter toward the last coordinates. One more, he said. Lyra nodded, her blue eyes shining. One more. The final nest was not carved in rock. It was not a market in shadow. It was a ship, sleek, black, and hungry. It waited like a predator, its docking bay open like a mouth. A voice purred through the comm. Come in, buyer. Bring your coins. Lyra's hand found Armin's sleeve. This one is different. Armin's gaze was hard as steel. Then we ended different. The freighter slid into the black ship's open bay. The collar's memory pulsed. The oath node glowed, and the voices of the freed whispered like a storm. The nest breakers had come, and this time they would not stop at walls or chains. The black ship's bay swallowed the freighter whole. Its walls pulsed faintly, lined with strange metal veins as though the vessel itself was alive. The docking clamps bit down with a jarring thud, locking them in place. Lyra clutched the broken collar tight against her chest. Her blue eyes glowed in the dim light, her face pale but determined. Armin stood beside her, hand resting near the holster on his hip. They had faced markets and nests, freed children and elders, but this was different. This ship was not a marketplace. It was a fortress. The airlock hissed open. Out stepped a figure taller than any handler they had seen. His armor was black, polished, and carved with marks of rank. His mask was no simple silver. It was gold, reflecting the bay's dim red light. The figure's voice was deep, smooth, full of arrogance. You come with an oath node, a broken collar, and foolish courage. Do you think you can topple a system older than your kind's first ships? Armin did not flinch. Systems rot. Chains break. All it takes is a voice loud enough to echo. The golden mask tilted slightly. And you think you are that voice? Lyra stepped forward. Her knees trembled, but her voice did not. Not me, us. She raised the collar high, its faint red glyphs glowing. This remembers every hand that touched it. Every crime. And with every witness we freed, its memory grew louder. The golden mask chuckled. Then I will silence it. And you? He raised his arm. A blade slid from his wrist, glowing with energy. His guards fanned out, shock pikes crackling. Mira drew her pistol. The marshal deputies leveled their rifles, and the bay turned into a storm of flashing lights. The first guard lunged. Armin met him head-on, slamming his fist into the man's chest plate and ripping the pike free. Sparks flew as he turned the weapon back on its wielder. Mira's stun shots dropped 2 more. The marshal deputies moved with cold precision, laying down suppressing fire. But the golden mask did not fight like his guards. He moved like a predator, his blade cutting arcs of fire through the air. He struck at Armin with speed that forced the human back step by step. Lyra screamed, "Armin!" She reached for him, but the collar in her hands pulsed violently. Its red light flared, projecting holograms into the bay. Faces, chains, screams, names. The ship's systems absorbed them, broadcasting them across every channel. The golden mask froze for a split second, his blade humming, What is this? Lyra's voice rose, shaking but fierce. The memory you tried to bury. The proof you tried to erase. Now the stars will hear us. The ship trembled as the broadcast spread. From the Accord beacon to the Marshall tender to the freed nests and beyond, the caller's memory blazed like fire. Armin seized the moment. He drove the stolen pike into the golden mask's chest plate. Sparks exploded and the armored figure staggered back. His mask cracked, revealing a pale, furious face beneath. You will not win, the handler spat. Armand's voice was iron. We already have. With one final strike, he sent the man crashing to the floor. The golden mask clattered away, rolling across the steel deck. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of the collar's fading glow. Lyra dropped to her knees, her chest heaving. The collar lay beside her, its last light flickering before finally going dark. The Marshal commander stepped forward, her badge gleaming. The transmission is complete. Every world within range has received it. The Accord cannot turn away now. Mira holstered her pistol, giving a sharp nod, and every handler who touched a chain will feel the weight of it. Lyra lifted her head slowly. Her glowing eyes were wet, but her voice was clear. No one will call me dead again. No one will call me property. My name is Lyra. I am not a chain. I am free. The children they had rescued gathered around her, their small hands reaching for hers. They whispered her name, repeating it as if carving it into memory. Lyra. Lyra. Armin placed a steady hand on her shoulder. And they'll remember you for what you are. Not a servant, not a slave, but a voice that woke the stars. Lyra turned to him, her lips curving into the faintest, fiercest smile. And you, human, you were my shield. When the collar tried to bind me again, you broke it. When the chains tried to silence me, you stood. I begged you to buy me as a servant. Instead, you gave me freedom. Armin chuckled softly, shaking his head. Freedom isn't mine to give. It's yours to take. And you took it. The Marshal's deputies secured the bay. The golden-masked handler was dragged away, his fury useless now. The freed children and elders boarded the Marshal tender, their eyes glowing with hope. As the ships pulled away from the black nest, the brown dwarf's weak light gave way to the first glimmer of dawn on a nearby world. The golden rays washed over the freighter, painting Lyra's face with warmth she had never felt before. She knelt on the deck, not in chains, but in peace. The collar lay shattered beside her, no longer pulsing, no longer binding. Armand stood over her, the axe from Mira's armory resting against his shoulder. Together they looked toward the rising light. For the first time, the universe knew her name, not a chain, not a servant, just Lyra. The freighter drifted in calm space for the first time in weeks. No alarms, no patrols, no chains clinking in the shadows. Outside the cockpit window, a small sun rose over a green world, its light spilling across the hull like gold. Inside, silence felt strange. Lyra sat on the floor of the cabin, her knees folded beneath her, the broken collar resting before her like the remains of an enemy defeated. Its surface no longer glowed. Its glyphs were dark. It was nothing more than scrap now, a memory turned to dust. She stared at it for a long while before finally whispering, "For so long, this thing told me who I was. It said I was dead. It said I was nothing. But now," she touched the cracked metal gently, "now it is only a lie, and lies cannot bind me." Armand stood by the console, his arms folded, watching her quietly. His voice was steady as always. "Then throw it away. Let the stars eat it." Lyra shook her head. "No, I don't want to forget it. I want to remember. Not as chains, but as proof, so that no one can say it never happened." Armin nodded slowly. He understood. Some scars were not meant to vanish. They were meant to remind. The console beeped softly. A message flickered on the screen. Accord Assembly acknowledges witness packet. Investigation dispatched. Marshals authorized to dismantle network. Mira's voice came through the comm, rough and steady. "They heard you. The nests are burning. The handlers are scattering. The Accord will claim the victory, but the voice was yours, girl." Lyra rose to her feet, her glowing blue eyes shining brighter in the dawn light. "Not mine alone, ours. Every child, every elder, every voice they tried to bury. We carried them all." Armin glanced at her, one brow raised. "And what about you, Lyra? Where do you go now that you're free?" She hesitated, her lips parting but no words forming. For the first time since they had met, she realized freedom was more than chains breaking. It was choice, and choice felt heavier than the collar had ever been. Quietly she asked, "What if I stay? Not as servant, not as dead, just as me." Armin studied her for a long moment, then gave a small smile. "Then you stay. Not because you're bound, but because you choose." Her chest warmed at those words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever given her the dignity of choice. She looked back at the rising world outside, her voice soft. "Then I choose to walk with you, to see more suns, to speak for more voices, to make sure no one is ever chained like I was." Armin turned back to the console, setting a new course. "Then buckle in, because the stars are wide and there's work to do." The ship's engines rumbled, steady and strong. The horizon shifted, the green world falling behind as they rose toward the endless dark once more. For a while, they flew in silence. But it was not the silence of fear nor of chains. It was the silence of freedom, filled with the sound of breath and the steady hum of a ship that carried more than cargo. It carried a promise. In the cargo hold, the freed children slept peacefully, their small hands no longer marked by chains. Elders murmured prayers of thanks. And in the cockpit, a human and an alien girl shared the same light. No longer strangers, no longer bound by master or servant, but bound by something stronger. Lyra leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. For the first time, she did not see chains when she dreamed. She saw stars, and Armin, watching her rest, felt something shift inside him too. He had once been only a hauler, a miner's son, a drifter between systems. But now he carried a voice that had changed the stars. The dawn grew brighter outside the window, and with it, a new story began, one not of chains and collars, but of names, choices, and voices that would never again be silent.